I hit the button, Ruth, so
Okay.
we are live, or we're almost live.
Thanks for joining us today for Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show Buzz Reaction. I'm Ruth Nelson, joined by Hall of Famers Mick Haley, Bob Bertucci, and Brian Gimolero, bringing you the most current issues and trends in volleyball. If you are viewing for the first time, you'll have the chance to listen to leaders in our sport provide their perspective on the questions that are asked, along with a discussion on topics that are current and ones that are affecting all of us during this challenging time. Our Buzz Reaction after show now features guests that have been selected from our Sign Up to Be a Guest program. Be sure to listen to these details at the end of our show on how to get on our guest list. Our guests today will cover their perspective on their team and conference and how they are approaching this spring season training and competition in preparation for the NCAA D1 championships. They will also touch on COVID restrictions, as well as how mask guidelines are used in training, competition, and possibly different state by state. We'll dive into the recruiting side of the newest live streaming of showcases, talent ID events, and club practice opportunities, since dead period is still in effect. So let's get started by heading over to Austin, Texas, where former Olympic coach Mick Haley will introduce our guest today. Mick?
Hey, thank you, Ruth. And it's my pleasure to introduce two of the more exciting personalities in the collegiate game right now. We have Coach Dave Shondell, the head coach at Purdue University, with us, and first-year head coach Brad Keller at the University of Southern California. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mick.
We're going to dive right into this, and I know you guys love it, so I'll ask the easy questions. But let's talk about conference rankings. Dave, we're going to start with you, but I don't know why, because when I recruited you at Kellogg, you turned me down to play for your dad, and I've never really forgotten that. But I'll go ahead and start with you anyway. The Big Ten rankings, pretty interesting. Wisconsin first, Minnesota second, Nebraska third, Penn State fourth, Purdue fifth, Michigan sixth, Ohio State seventh, Illinois eighth, Michigan State ninth, Northwestern 10th. You coaches rank each other. One, do you think those are pretty accurate? That's the first question I have. And then I have a second question for you, Dave. So tell us about the conference rankings.
Well, I think those are fairly accurate. I think over the last several years, there's been some consistency in our league. That's not too far off of the way that I rank them, Mick. There may have been a few changes down there in the bottom, 5 or 6. Illinois might be a little bit better than what they're given credit for with the success they've had lately. They did lose a couple of, top players, but it's been a league lately where there's been 4 powerhouse teams, and then there have been another 4 that have been knocking on the door. And then there's been those others that have been trying to catch up with those. But I think it's pretty accurate right now with what I've seen so far.
So where do you put your team in this? You've had limited practice. The conference didn't do you any favors. They sent you on the road to Wisconsin to play the #1 ranked team in the country, not only in your conference, and you had to do that on TV. Tell us a little bit about that and where you are, and then give us any really special player that you think we should follow this year, not only on your team, but in your league.
Well, okay. Well, I think we got a really good team. We graduated 2 players from last year. Both were middles. One was a really good player, Blake Moeller, and then another player that was splitting time with the with JL Johnson, who had a good match against Wisconsin on the first night up there. But everything else is there. Our strength is going to be serving, passing, and defense. Right now, we don't have Grace Cleveland. Grace Cleveland is one of those special players. I think she's one of the top 5 players in the league. And Grace is a 6'3" opposite or left side that is out with a non-COVID illness, is how I would describe it. And we expect to have her back in a week or two. So we're looking forward to getting her back. But without her, we just couldn't match up with Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 6'8" and 6'4" in the middle. They've got 2 really experienced outside hitters, All-American setter, and then a freshman that we thought we might be able to lay off of that played right side that had 10 kills in about the first 5 minutes. So that worked out real well for us. But they're loaded. And but I also think that right behind them are Minnesota, Nebraska. Nebraska's got everybody back, the entire squad back from a year ago. Minnesota had a great recruiting class. They're trying to, got a new setter, so that will be interesting with them. Russ has 2 of the best middle hitters in the country, athletically really good. Johnny Parker, who's good on the outside, a setter who is small, but sets the ball as well as anybody in our league. And then there's us, and there's Michigan. I think Michigan will be good if they get a chance to play. They haven't played. They won't play the next 2 weekends either, so that'll be interesting. Ohio State is a team that has back-to-back top 5 recruiting classes. So they'll be young, but they'll be very talented. And then after that, the team I think that's kind of a surprise, will be a surprise, is Northwestern. Northwestern has a kid named Temmie Thomas, and I know, Mick, you're aware of her. Temmie Thomas may be the best volleyball specimen in the country, and she's a sophomore. And made too many hitting errors last year, but she'll be much better this season. And they played Rutgers in the opening round last weekend, and she was phenomenal. But that's kind of how I look at our league and what our expectations are to try to get into that top 4. We got to play well enough to get in the top 4, but we weren't even close this past weekend.
Well, that's a great analysis. Thanks, Dave. And as always, you're right on it. So good luck. I hope the scheduling people give you a little bit of a break here the next couple of weeks. So
thank you.
That'll be good. A lot of you don't know that Brad Keller has been in the Pac-12 maybe over 15 years. Is that right, Brad?
Yeah, mostly on the men's side, though. So the MPSF, which is basically the Pac-12, is what we have it. So Stanford, USC, UCLA are all in the MPSF for men's volleyball. But I've been around the game for a long time.
Well, you've been a first-year head coach for a long time. You really want to coach a game here pretty soon, don't you?
Yeah, I really do. I really do. I'm getting antsy. I'm getting ready to go. We get to finally get to travel up to Corvallis and play Oregon State twice. So it's nice to actually maybe knock some of the rust off and see where we are and start building it up. So
well, let's talk about your conference, because you guys did something really weird. You got Stanford national champs out there, loaded. Yeah, they lose some players, but they got all kinds of talent. And your coaches in your conference ranked them 3rd. They ranked Utah 1st, and Danny Drews is a specimen. There's no question about that. But Utah 1st, Washington 2nd, and of course they got upset in the first match at home this last week. Stanford 3rd, UCLA 4th, and they gave you a lot of credit. USC 5th, Washington State 6th, Oregon 7th, Colorado 8th, Arizona State 9th, Arizona 10th, followed by Cal and Oregon State. So what do you think about the rankings in the Pac-12?
Well, I have 2 answers. Number one is I don't care. Maybe I should never say that, but I don't care. Rankings are the first rankings of the year don't mean anything to me. The second is I don't really know the teams all that well. I've only been on the women's side for the Pac-12 1 year, and I don't know much about Stanford's recruiting class. I know that they have the top recruiting class, but I don't know much about them. I do know that they lost 5 starters from last year, or 4 or 5 starters, so that's a pretty big hit, especially if it's Hans, Plummer, and Gray. I know that. I think Utah and UCLA are the top 2. That's where I think it is. And then after that, I think it's kind of muddled up. I don't really know. Washington has a lot of firepower. They're physical. They can hit the ball hard. I just don't know where they are in the grand scheme of things. I know that this last weekend wasn't a good example because I think their setter's just getting back in the groove of things. I think they moved an outside hitter to libero, so they're trying to figure some stuff out. But we all know that staff does an amazing job of training, so that team is going to be good
Is there a dark horse?
Quick. I thought Oregon and Washington State played pretty high level volleyball for the first weekend. I thought they both looked pretty good. Especially I'm hearing that Washington State barely trained. So kudos to Jen Greeny and Burdette and that staff. But you got to look at the arms. It's about arms. At least for me, it's always about arms. And Danny Drews is one of the biggest arms in the country, and Mac May is one of the biggest arms in the country. And so I think you gotta go towards those teams that have the people that can hit your way out of situations. Because I don't know about you, but ball control wasn't so great across the country with week one.
Well, let's talk about your team real quick. Give us what we need to look for and what you're going to try to do. And then you've already identified some top players for us to look at, but what about your team?
Well, I have a young team. I have a young team that's a lot of talent, but I think talent that's not quite there yet. They've got to learn how to play the game. So we're doing a lot of how we're touching the volleyball and where that ball is being placed, and emphasis on a lot of systems. I think we're going to have to be really good. I think Dave said it perfectly. You got to be really good at serve and pass, which is everyone knows. But I think we got to get really good at out of system and what are you actually trying to do, and how many opportunities are you giving yourself within that system. And so I think that's what we're going to be going with. I think we have some young, talented players that you're going to see over the course of a couple of years that are going to be good. I think Kayla Knowles is going to be really, really good. I think that Amelia Vesca is going to be very, very good. I think Raquel Athero is going to be very, very good. But I'm going to find out in a couple of years.
Bob, Brad sounds like you coaching your team. What questions do you have for Brad?
Well, let's start with Brad first. I mean, a lot of coaches have talked to me, Brad, about, problems they've been experiencing in just practicing, and the limitations that have been put on them either by their conference or by their school. Let's talk about some of the limitations that you've experienced and how they've affected you preparing your team for this season.
There's been a lot. So, and it's different for every school in the Pac-12 because the rules get it's different. Some schools are practicing without masks on. We're practicing with a mask on at all times. I know the Pac-12 now has mandated that, but we were practicing the entire time with a mask on. We only started playing 6-on-6 in blocking January 12th, something like that. There's only so much over the net pepper and serve and pass and everything else you can do. I mean, there's only so much creativity you can go down. So there's a little bit of that. And then I think just not knowing. I mean, all of a sudden you get promised something and then it gets taken away because COVID dictates all. And so I joke with my kids as best I can. I go, listen, I like steak. So just here's the steak analogy. You want filet mignon and you're getting rump roast. And no matter how many times you're getting promised filet mignon with all the sides and everything that you can possibly imagine, you're ultimately not going to get it. But the great news is you get to eat. So let's just take the rump roast and let's just move forward and we'll figure it out. And it's going to be okay. You get to play. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to complain. I'm glad people are playing. It looks like Stanford's going to get to play again, hopefully. I think that's really important. So it's been very challenging, Bob. That's the shorter answer, and we're just rolling with the punches.
Dave, how about you? What have you experienced?
Well, we haven't had a lot of restrictions, except that we didn't play in the fall. That was the one restriction. But in the Big Ten, every school has been managing their own situation based on their respective state. So kind of like in the Pac-12, the conference isn't dictating a whole lot of what you can and can't do. Our problems were in the fall. We had so many people in quarantine, usually without any fault of their own, just being contact traced. We had one of our best players was out 56 days for quarantine, never had the virus, but was out, missed 56 days. So you had a lot of that. But I mean, my concern is as we move forward is, it's possible that some of these teams that didn't train as hard during the fall and in the winter may benefit by being fresh and more energized once we get into the spring, because I can see already that we got kids, there's a lot of stress out there. I mean, you know, you'd like to tell your kids that there's no big problems, but there's a lot of stress. And I can just see it in players that I'm glad they're playing. I think it's good that they're playing. Don't get me wrong. I think that they're in a better position, that they have a team and they have a purpose and togetherness to be playing during this pandemic. But I also think that how you handle each player and your team, how hard you're going to try to train them and put them in the gym, that's going to be interesting. And I think you have to be very careful.
Well, you touched on another question I had, and that was just, you know, the inequities, you know, within conferences and between conferences on, you know, how much you can train and the different regulations that come in. You guys feel like you just roll with the punches and not worry about that? Or do you have some concerns about it?
Oh, I think if you want to, you know, be ultra competitive, which everybody was before the season started, you were worried that maybe a couple of teams were practicing a lot earlier than you were. But our conference coaches, and we got some pretty competitive characters in this league, but we all decided before it started was that we just wanted our kids to play. Easy to say, you know, 3 months ago, but we just wanted our kids to play. And if that meant you had 9 players that were healthy and the other team had a full roster, that's just the way it was going to be. But they deserved to play. It was going to be for their best interest, for health reasons, emotionally and physically, that they play. And so this is going to be a year we're just getting started. And we've got, you know, Penn State hasn't played. They're going to miss their first 2 weekends. Michigan's missing at least their first 3 weekends. And we're just getting started. So it's going to be a real bag of tricks, I think.
All right. So Brad, let me ask you this one. All right. Just what Dave has talked about. What do you think about, you know, I mean, you want to be competitive, but this is not the year to be competitive, maybe. All right. What do you think about just putting 2 teams out there on 2 different pods, keep them separated? So when one pod goes down, you got another pod left that you still can go out and play that week, instead of what's happening right now. Penn State's completely shut down. Michigan's completely shut down. They're not getting to play at all. What's your thoughts on that?
I'd be open to it. I think it just depends on each program. I'm in a position where I'm going to try to build culture, and this is a really good opportunity for me to get the foundation. Being a new coach, it's super interesting being a new coach. My goals might be extremely different than Dave, because Dave has been established and he's got maybe has his team and they're doing something very different. For me, it's going to be about the more my kids can be together and with a new staff and understand our verbiage and how we handle things, and all those small components is going to be really, really important right now. And so I would actually not separate them in pods from myself. I would roll with the punches and I would try the best that we can. I mean, it is what it is in some of those scenarios, but for me, it's going to be about building culture and everything else. And Dave made a really good point. This isn't about volleyball anymore. People can talk about this any way they want. This is about giving kids a chance to escape from the realities of what this is. This is a huge deal. You know, my brother's an emergency medical doctor. He comes home every day and he's going to war. It's hard for me to sit there and go, oh, I had a bad day in the gym. You know, I'm like, oh my goodness, this so-and-so, like, that's just, it's garbage for me to even say that. That's not perspective. So to have the opportunity to play and give them a break is huge. I had 5 young women in my gym cry in the middle of practice. It wasn't a hard practice, Bob. It wasn't anything like that. It had nothing to do with practice. These kids are going through a lot. And then here's the other part. And I don't know, Dave, how it is for you, but it's almost like a prison, right? You have to stay in your room. You can't go out. You only get to go out to go lift and play volleyball. You have to pick up your meal. You go back to your room. You can't congregate. You can't do this. You can't do that. There's no freedom there. It's a terrible time to be a college kid to try to go through this. So I think that any chance that we get to spin this and like we get to do these sorts of things is going to be really.
So Dave, you know, Kelly is going to be at Wisconsin is going to be extremely competitive. You know, he's being ranked first in the country. He's going to want to win every game he plays. All right. How about you? I mean, you know, you just talked about, you know, the same kind of things Brad was just talking about. Would you separate your team in pods and just make sure you're keeping somebody playing and not worry about the wins and losses?
I think, I mean, Brad's making really good conversation, good points. I don't care where you're at. You're still about building culture. Whether I've been here 18 years and we have every player back, we still have to develop the kind of culture that's going to allow us to keep moving forward. Every year is different. And the other thing is, and Brad talked about this, we've got these guys in a bubble. It doesn't mean they're not going to catch COVID, but they're being tested 6 times a week, a couple of times on certain days. They've been refined, to their apartments or wherever they are. They're not supposed to be out gallivanting around. Again, it doesn't mean somebody's not going to catch COVID, but most of the kids on our team have already had it. Just so you know, I mean, they've already had it. Now, when the college kids get it, it physically doesn't seem like a big deal, but I just still think the emotion of that, not knowing what's down the road, certainly is a little scary to everybody, not just people our age, but the young kids as well. But it's a nice idea. There's no way we could divide our group up like that. And Wisconsin could do it because they got so many athletes. It's ridiculous at Wisconsin. But they might be about the only program that could do that. I still think that the strength of this right now is family, making your team a family and having them love each other and care about each other, because it's a challenging time, but I think they're dealing with it. I think they're doing okay. And but that's our job to make it the best we can. And yeah, we'll be competitive. There's no doubt we're going to be competitive, but we also have to be realistic about what's going on.
Now, when you guys, test, if you have somebody test positive on your team, is your whole team shut down, or, is it just that player has to be removed and you can continue to play?
They should not have to be contact traced unless they might be living in the same place with them. And that we're wearing masks all the time. So that's designed to prevent the contact tracing to start pulling everybody out that was at a practice. Okay. But if they're, and they've been told when they're at home, they're supposed to stay in their own rooms, just like Brad said. They're not supposed to be out in the dining table eating with 4 of their roommates who all play on the same team. Now, who knows what they're doing? At the end of the day, I'm sure they'll be honest if somebody does catch it. They have been so far, which is why we've got so many that have already had the virus.
Okay, Bob, I hate to interrupt you, but we're getting close on time, and I know Brian's got some questions and I've got some questions. All right, Brian.
Thank both of you for being on. Your insights are great. Brad and Dave, this has become a very serious issue, and I don't want to make light of it. However, I do, if you break into pods, I don't want to be on the rump roast pod. I want to be on the filet mignon pod if I possibly can,
Right.
This season, we're down to 48 teams in the NCAA playoffs, and you're into the 2 top conferences. So what are you looking at in your conference in terms of at-large, or do you feel you will have? Either one of you. Brad, why don't you start?
You cut out on me at the end there, Brian. So it was basically.
What do you feel like you'll have in terms? What are you shooting at as at-large bids? What's the conference shooting at, given there's only 48 teams?
Well, this is probably going to sound contradictory to what I just said earlier, but the program that I'm at, we're supposed to compete for the very best. It's what Mick Haley did, and it's what my job is. So I've got to get this program to that space. And so we're always going to be shooting to make the NCAA tournament, deep runs in the NCAA tournament, compete for national championships. That's part of what this program requires. And so there is that. I'm going to take it one day at a time, because COVID, again, dictates all. So if let's say we're going and we're winning a lot of games, but then all of a sudden we get wiped out for 2 or 3 weeks and we don't have enough games under our belt, we're not going to be able to get the NCAA tournament. So I can't put a whole lot of emphasis on something I can't control. And so I'm not going to I got too many other stresses going on. So I'm not going to worry about that. But yeah, we're always going to try to compete and get to the at-large bid process or win the conference, and everyone else in the Pac-12 should be talking the same way.
And what about, how many full practices have you had, Brad? How many full practices?
I would say 10 full practices from March. So from March 11th to 2020 till this date, I've had 10 full practices where I've actually been able to block, play 6-on-6, actually do the skills that we need to do.
And the same two questions for you, Dave.
Yeah, were you asking how many teams you think will get in? Is that what you
Yeah.
wanted, Brian?
Yes, yes.
First of all, I want to thank you for letting loose of Sheridan Atkinson for us and
Oh, yeah.
allowing us to win some matches.
Yeah, you did a great job with her.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
she's turned into a really, really, really fine.
Yeah, I ran into her not long ago. She's
Oh, did you?
incredibly funny,
Yeah. Oh,
incredibly
she's
funny.
right. She's a riot. Yeah, we
Yeah.
love her. But
Yeah.
I think probably 6. I mean, I think that, you look at it, you think, well, you might deserve more than that, but I think that we can get 6 based on the strength of our conference. What they're going to look at, my understanding is the committee will look at the history. There's no way they can compare teams when they're playing all within their conference. So they can't compare USC and Purdue. They're going to look at the history of that conference and how many teams that they get consistently in the tournament, and then kind of, I think, use that as a parameter. And so I'm hoping that 6 from our league, but how it is with that committee. And then the second thing would be, we practiced a lot more than what Brad has. I can tell you that. We were able to pick up in the fall and have some regular practices once our strength coach and trainer said, you guys are in good enough shape now to go. There was a protocol for return to play and that kind of thing. But I bet we had 8-9 weeks where we were going pretty much full for the most part. Some of those were some were 8-hour week practices, but we got into 20-hour week practices. And the only difference was we never had more than probably 75% of our team there because a certain amount of them were out with quarantine. And then we got back on practicing regularly about January 9th. I think that's the date where we've actually got in the gym. So we had about 2.5 weeks before we played Wisconsin to practice. But I felt like that was enough. I mean, for us, because we had gotten enough done in the fall, we didn't need that much done after Christmas break.
I'm going to turn it over to Ruth because of time.
Oh,
Thanks,
yeah,
Brian.
you guys give me 1 minute to ask 3 questions.
Don't waste it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I won't waste it. Okay, so I am going from filet to sirloin. I'm not going to rump. I'm going to get right to it. Recruiting. What about all the live streaming? Are you guys making decisions on recruits and ones that you're going to sign based on live streaming since you're still in dead period? And let's go Brad first.
No, all the kids that I've made decisions on, I got to see beforehand, and I actually have gotten to see, I got lucky because I got in enough time to know the players that we're interested in. So yeah, there's going to be others out there, but I know at least what I'm looking at. So I don't have to make that decision right now. We'll see if this continues. And yeah, I mean, the 23 class, 24 class is going to start getting more interesting, but right now, no. Okay,
Dave, how about you?
We're in the same boat. We got enough of our recruiting done early and saw people that, we're done through the current senior and junior class in high school. So, we will be watching sophomores and freshmen in those classes as much as we can. But fortunately, like Pac-12 and Big Ten were the kind of conferences that got far enough ahead that we're not having to eyeball them through a video screen and determine if they're good enough to play for us yet.
Okay. Hey, listen, guys, thank you very much. And I'm going to go to Mick. He's going to do a little recap and talk about next week. And I'm going to only give him like 30 seconds.
Oh, great. In 30 seconds, I've got to say, both of you have probably offered more questions than answers for us. So we have to have this show again. And that's been good. Thanks to both of you for being so candid and give us some straight points here. Next week, we're going to have somebody on to talk about the new Pro League that's starting in Dallas. And in 2 weeks, we're going to take your suggestion, guys, and have somebody on, I hope, from the NC2A volleyball committee to tell us how this really is going to work. It's my understanding we can get them in 2 weeks, if not then in 3 weeks for sure. So stay tuned to the program, and because we've got some real interesting things coming on, and we heard some great things today for both of you. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you guys. And you can guess what? You can either go back to your room, don't have filet, do rump,
Yeah.
and thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Thanks,
for
guys.
having-
All
Thank you.
right,
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brad.
guys. Appreciate
Enjoyed
it. Dave, good luck.
Thank you too, Brad. You too, man.
Good
book
job.
your Master Coaches custom virtual clinic today by heading over to our Instagram and click on our bio and click on virtual clinic link. If you'd like to be on our guest list for the Buzz Reaction after show, please click on the link in our Instagram, want to be a guest, and you will not only receive an update, your name will be on the guest appearance list. Remember, our Buzz shows are all on YouTube, so please follow us there. You can follow us on Facebook at Volleyball Master Coaches, VB Master Coaches, for Twitter and Instagram, and a special shout out to SNA Sports in Baden Sports. Stay on live with John as he closes today and jump on Buzz Reaction. Let's go to our Buzz and Buzz Reaction digital partner, Dr. John Foreman, who will update us on a most recent podcast. And he also is going to be letting in our 2 new guests. John.
Yes, I will. Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, upcoming on the podcast, we've got an interesting discussion with a coaching friend of mine from the UK on the topic of mentorship and coaching and how we can get more of it. It's I'll admit, a little bit rambling because he says right in the beginning that I didn't know where we were going to start and I don't know where we're going to go. But at the end, he came out with a couple of talking points. So that was the action points. So that was good. And in a future episode to be recorded tomorrow, probably, we hope, one Ruth Nelson is going to be joining me to talk about her experience with a mini volleyball congress that she did recently. So that should be interesting as well. As always, coachingvb.com or at coachingvb on Facebook and Twitter. And with that, I will admit our 2 guests for the reaction.
Okay, we see our guests. Welcome to our Buzz Reaction. And today we have 2 guests that have been selected when they signed up for our Want to Be a Guest program. The new format allows 1 to 3 guests to be on the show for the first 10 minutes of Buzz Reaction before master coaches jump into their conversation about topics from our earlier Buzz show. Each guest has a chance to ask our master coaches a question they have always wanted to ask, or might have been afraid to ask, or just wanted an opinion on a topic or a situation. First, we have Karen Wright, former collegiate volleyball player at Ouachita Baptist, owner of Victory Volleyball Club, and co-owner of Net Results Sports Facility in Plano, Texas. And next, we have Steve Collins, graduate of Ouachita Baptist, head coach at Trinity Christian High School in Addison, Texas, and has been coaching club for 12 years, and this year will be coaching 12s and 17s. Welcome, Karen and Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, but before you ask your secret questions, we would love to know your reaction after you participated in our Dallas Master Coaches Championship Skills Series Clinic. Let's go to Karen first.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. The coaching clinic was just such a great experience for our coaches that were able to attend. For me personally, I was able to be involved with the BYOP part of it and my daughter, which was very fun. But just the one-on-one you get, the individual time, the breakout sessions, the opportunity to ask, questions that pertain to what your team is going through. It was such a great clinic, and I know our coaches got a lot out of it. So,
Wow. All right. Let's hear Steve. What was your reaction?
I found it extremely exciting to be a part of an experience with coaches with so much experience. So just hearing the way they describe things, hearing the way they explain things when you're used to hearing it one way and then you hear it another way, that's the best part to me of learning to teach and learning to learn. Like, those are some of the things that I really enjoyed with it. And it was just a great experience watching them work with kids, watching them work with coaches. It was great to see both dynamics of coaches and players learning from other coaches.
Okay, should we do the drum roll? Let's see. What's your secret question? Let's go to Steve first.
My secret question is, what is the one thing you always remember from your time with working with athletes, whether it was a moment, whether it was something you taught a kid that they all of a sudden they just got it, they understood it, or what was your greatest success with a kid while coaching them?
Okay, why don't you guys jump in? Brian,
Well,
okay.
I'll start first then,
All right.
because Steve, you already touched on it. I can't give you a specific thing, but it's when you're working with an athlete and you're trying different ways to get your point across, and all of a sudden you see the light bulb just come on. They've just figured it out for themselves, and now they've stepped up their game. That's probably the most exciting thing for me.
Okay, Mick or Brian?
Well, mine is, and thanks for being on, both of you, and thanks for being at the clinic. I've always believed that and to have a good team, you don't pit players against each other because they're competing against each other anyway. So you pit them against themselves in the sense that this is what we're teaching you, try to learn it. And if you learn it, we'll give you more. And I love it when a player struggles with something and they finally get to do it and practice stops and the team applauds them, because then I know the team cares about the development of the individual, because as the individual gets better, the team automatically, by definition, gets better. And it means they're pulling for each other instead of competing against each other. And I've always loved when I see that response from the team when someone struggling learns something.
Okay, Mick?
Yeah, the light bulb moment for me is the same as Bob described. You just see a youngster that is so trying so hard, and once they get something, the satisfaction on their face and the look of I can do this just is so stimulating to me. You want to go back in the gym every day. You work for that moment. It's like when you play on a team and there are 6 players and you're all going so hard that in the middle of the competition, you don't even have to talk because you can communicate just with your eyes. And the other players know exactly what you're going to do, and you know what they're going to do. And in teaching, that's the same thing. My participation teacher at Burris High School in Muncie, when I went to Ball State, we had to do participation. She always said there will be a learning moment. You have to be ready to teach when the learner is ready to learn. And so as a teacher, you have to be fully loaded all the time, because when the time is right, that person is in that spot where they're willing to get the material, then you have to be able to bring it. So that's
okay. All right, Karen, your secret question.
All right. Well, just thinking about this, we have at our club around 50 to 60 coaches, and throughout a season, we offer coaches training. What would be some topics? Because we've got advanced coaches that have been doing this for a long time. They're passionate. And then also some new coaches right out of college. What kind of trainings would you offer early on that could just help benefit both the advanced, what are some things that we could be focusing on in those trainings?
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I learned when I became the Olympic coach was that as the athletes get older, the coaches seem to have a tendency to think about systems and those kinds of things. And in fact, what the athletes really want is they want you to break it down more, to be more precise. How can they get better? The really good athletes demand from their coaches, and that's why they go play for those coaches. They demand that they have a chance to get better, and they want to learn from those people. So I think many times we think advanced training is training that's more in the way of systems and different kinds of hitting and that sort of thing, when in fact, to get better, many times it's the refinement of the skills they already have. So that would be my answer to that.
Okay. Ryan, Bob?
I'll jump in. I think it would be best for you, and if you have that big a club with that many people, that you in your hierarchy decide what you want to teach, what everything is that you want to teach, the entire package. Where if somebody saw one of the players from your club, they would know they were from your club, no matter where it was from. So you have to get an idea, a full picture of what your group wants to teach. So there can be a consistency of teaching technical and tactical skill so that everybody is interchangeable, because it's very difficult. I owned a large club for a long time. And when one coach is teaching one thing and another coach is teaching another thing, and you start to get some conflicts from players and parents and all that. So it's a huge undertaking. But I think that it would behoove your group to get under one training idea that, you know, could be taught in different ways, but to come out, the picture's the same, so that the players and your club was identifiable. The other part of that is there's great benefits for you and your club that kids you know, look like they can play and look consistent in their level of play. So that's the best I can do with that.
That was great. All right. All right, Bob.
Well, piggybacking off of what Brian's saying and trying to relate it to master coaches. And Karen, you know, you and Steve experienced this already. When we came in and did our skill series, we did just what Mick was saying. We tried to break it down to keys that the beginning coach would have something to work with, but the more experienced coach would at least have a method to follow. But how to relate it to your situation with your whole club is maybe we do a virtual clinic where we're doing the skill series again. All right. The more experienced coaches can opt to look at that or not, especially if they've experienced already. And then maybe have a question and answer time where we're addressing specific things that they really need for them to take that next step as a coach.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So the question I have for both of you is, if you had the most inspirational word that you could give to coaches out there that are in club coaching and high school coaching, what would those inspirational words be based on how long you guys have been in coaching? How could you tell to a first-year coach, what would you say the reason why you've been at this long? Karen.
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna let you think. Steve, I know.
That's what
All right. So
I said when you asked me that question.
yeah, one of my favorite phrases for that is, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So a lot of times when you're working with young kids, especially, they want to know that you believe in them as a person and as a player. So it's important that they understand that the belief and the trust is there, so that they can learn from you and trust what you're telling them. Also, as long as, you know, and then they will build that bond a lot easier when they know that you believe in them. And so they'll trust you to teach them.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Karen, you had enough time thinking.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that too. But I think getting to know each athlete and what will work for them, who they are, how can I challenge them in different ways? Getting them to trust you too is huge. You can get teams so far when they know you truly care about them as a person, and also how they are going to perform, that you're behind them 100%. So I think.
Okay.
On the
well, our time is up, and we'd like to thank both Karen and Steve for joining us on today's Buzz Reaction Show, and wishing you both great success as you move safely into your junior club season. Thanks to both of you, and be sure to tell your friends about the Buzz News Show. Thank you both.
Thanks
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming on, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now let's hear it from master coaches, Mick, Bob, and Brian on their thoughts on today's show.
Well, I had one take on the question I asked about conference rankings. Brad basically said the conference rankings were not correct, that he felt the two best teams were Utah and UCLA. That's not the way the conference coaches ranked them. They ranked Washington second, Stanford third, and UCLA fourth, and SC surprisingly fifth, but I think SC's talent probably warrants that. And he said nothing about Arizona State, which I thought was interesting because they came out and played two exceptionally good matches. They were, I think, ranked 9th in the conference, and they played 2 excellent matches. I looked at the stats, and if we'd had time, I would have talked with Brad a little bit more about this, but here are a little bit of the stats on that. The first night, Arizona State won 3-0 going away. The first set was close. The next 2 sets were not that close, and they won going away. They averaged about 13.5 kills a set. They scored almost 17 points. The next night, Washington came back and won 3-1. And each set was 2 points except the third set. And the interesting thing was Washington scored themselves 20.5 points themselves, which means that Arizona State was not giving them a lot. And they were able to win scoring that many points for themselves. And Arizona State still had a chance to win that. Somebody commented that had Arizona State won the first set the second night, they thought they would have taken both matches. So I think the dark horse in that conference maybe is Arizona State. We need to follow that. The other thing that Dave said is he said basically the big 4 are still there. I thought Dave's athletes were pretty good. You see Cleveland play. Cleveland hits the heck out of the ball. So he's ranked number 5. I think everybody after that is somewhat questionable in the Big Ten. I do think they have a big 4, maybe a big 4.5 if Purdue comes along as well as they think they're going to come. I saw a number of the Big Ten teams play, and I don't know how to rank anybody after 5, but the top 5 are pretty good, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I just don't think Russ Rose at Nebraska can win with 2 middles being his primary scorers. I think he needs more than 1 outside. I think he needs 2 outsides scoring on one of the pins or the other pin, but we'll see. He tried to do that last year with those kids, and those kids in the middle are really good. But he didn't get the consistency of the approach on the outside. So the scoring on the outside. So that's what I learned from the conversation.
Okay, Bob, Brian.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I posed my pod question to those guys. I had to do that.
That was a curve, though. We didn't know that was coming.
That was a curve because I'm actually in the process of trying to decide whether I want to do that or not. Because our institution, if you get one person sick, tested positive, they shut the whole team down. All right. I mean, a manager on our basketball team, one of our basketball teams tested positive, and the whole team couldn't play for 14 days. So, I was thinking about, hey, let me just split these guys up, first team, second team, or split them up evenly, and always have a team to play, and just keep them in pods, at least going into the second half of the season. They were definitely not in favor of that. I thought that was interesting.
You don't think Pod B would poison Pod A, huh?
Well, I would have to get this all okayed by my medical staff first, but it was something I was thinking about because I'm just, looking at what's happened with the other teams. And our wrestling team started doing that. They had 3 teams, 3 pods, and they trained separately and they wrestled separately. But now Friday, probably because of the other team that they were competing against, the match just got canceled. They've done everything they can to be able to be ready to play.
They just scheduled themselves.
Yeah,
That's right. They should play each
They
other.
just might wrestle each other, right? So I don't know what the answer is. I'm not. We'll have to come up with another show to tell you what we're doing.
So Brian, what did you learn? Did you learn anything?
I rarely learn anything, but I thought that it's really a serious issue out there, and everybody's trying. Like Bob, I don't mean to make light of that. You're trying to get your athletes out there, and so is everyone else. And one of the things I thought is, I don't know if the season will go on. I don't know how long it'll go on, and I don't mean to be a pessimist about it, but how difficult is it for USC to practice 10 times in the year and Purdue to practice 10 weeks? It's you know, as coaches, we were all under such regulation that everybody practiced at exactly the same amount, hours, days, weeks for the year. And now it's, who knows what's going to
It's the
happen.
Wild West.
And yeah, it's a Wild West. And who knows, I'm really concerned about regular injuries because they're not prepared. I'm also a little concerned about the long haulers who get this virus. And there are a few athletes that are long haulers. But, you know, hopefully it'll go on. You know, hopefully we'll have a great championship and everybody gets an opportunity and it all works out in the end. But I've got some I'm worried about the kids.
Well, we've exposed ourselves to a big lie, it looks like, that we always have told the NC2A rule makers that we needed at least 3 weeks, if not more, preseason to get our athletes ready. Many of us were advocating for 6 weeks, a whole month of July, and start the second week of August and then end before Thanksgiving, rather than run into December when everything was so expensive. And that seems to have proved not to hold water, because we got people starting with 3 practices, 10 practices, whatever. They seem to be playing. I hope people don't look at that as saying that's the new normal, and start doing that so they don't have to pay for the kids coming in early and that sort of thing. That was one takeaway. Second, I wanted to hear what Ruth thought of all of this, though. She goes around interviewing us, but we never get her 2 cents, and she always has at least 3 cents worth of material. So what are you?
Okay, I have 5 cents. Bob took too long today and he curbed into Brian and ours time. We get 5 minutes apiece.
Well, I'm
So-
giving you a chance now to tell us what you think. So come on.
Okay, well, I was really interested in asking them about 2023 and 2024 in case the dead period was extended all the way through summer, because some people are going to have to end up making decisions on recruits based on what they see in live streaming. I know you got something up your sleeve, Mick, because you're smiling too much.
Well, and that reminded me of what I was going to jump in there. If we hadn't been running short on time, I was going to jump in and say, you guys, you're talking about recruiting high school down. You're recruiting from each other's teams. I want to know how you, because you're playing now, you get to see players on each other's teams. So you're going to try to get in the portal and get to transfer, because that's where the big recruiting is coming on now. It's not coming from high school kids. It's who you're going to recruit from somebody else's team.
Coaches are becoming general managers. You know?
Absolutely.
I want to know, though, how serious it could be during dead period with college coaches coaching club teams, and what the NCAA will decide on that, because that is an advantage now, especially
That was a
during
more
dead period.
critical question. I thought that should have been your first question, because that is one we all like to know the answer to.
Yeah, Bruce, we gave you so much time. Why didn't you ask that? My God.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But
You know
another
how I'm
problem
going to
is-
start using the mute button for Bob.
That's a filibuster. That's called a filibuster.
Hey,
That's a-
actually, Mick did pretty good about cutting
Yeah.
his short. But no, Bob,
Well-
it's still my turn. I'm still on. I still have another minute, I see. I also wanted to know more about masking, because so many junior clubs and high school teams are saying, we are following what colleges are doing. And that's their excuse. Just like, for instance, remember when Charles Barkley was interviewed and he got upset in a basketball game, and they interviewed and says, well, you're a role model. He says, no, I'm not a role model. Well, no, these college athletes and coaches are role models, and they are following what those coaches are doing. And
Well, you
that's-
saw Oregon was playing with masks. I think Washington State was too. So I think the dictate in the Pac-12 is they all play with masks, but I didn't see masks in the Big Ten. So what happens when they play each other in the playoffs?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I hope they don't wear glasses, because I haven't figured out how to wear a mask and not fog up my glasses.
I agree with that.
Me either.
You gotta wear goggles. You gotta put goggles on.
That's
Come
exactly right.
You
As
should've
I'm
seen
sure
me
Bob
try-
can attest, it's even worse in the cold weather.
on.
Well, I
By the
would
way, I'm not going third anymore because I wrote down every question that Mick wrote up. and I'm following along, and I checked off every single one of those questions before it came my turn.
Well, with Bob firing off so many questions, he's got to go fourth now.
Yeah, he's behind Ruth.
Well,
No,
that's fine with
Bob
me.
isn't asked any questions anymore. I'm going to ask him first in the buzz reaction, the question. I mean,
Well,
we are tampering on him now.
The next time, Ruth, you say to everybody, "Oh, what do you think?" And nobody says anything. I'm just going to sit there. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to wait.
But you know what, Bob? I text you in your chat like 5 times. And obviously you weren't looking. So no.
Oh, no.
longer am I
Yeah, you're
doing
right.
that.
Let me put my chat up there and see what I got.
Yeah,
Yeah, son of a gun. You did text me a couple of times.
That's
didn't you?
right.
I
A couple.
texted Ruth and I said, get him off of there.
You know what?
All I did was I looked at how much time Mick was on there, and I said, all right, I'm going to do the same as Mick.
No, but you can't
Yeah.
count Mick's 10 minutes because I have 2 minutes in the beginning. He did great. Should I just put down, okay, Bob, you're on.
Yeah, Ruth, you know what you can do when you do pose those questions is ask Brian, what do you think? Or Bob, what do you think? And Mick, what do you think? You can direct it because there is that pause in there all the time.
Oh yeah, I would love to, but
Go ahead.
Bob had no pause. I'm serious.
Oh.
He's like
Yeah.
driving in Dallas on the toll road in the show-off lane. He was not pausing.
Well, why don't you just mute him? You got the mute
Well,
button.
you know what? The last time I muted, we couldn't get him off mute, so he would have been off the entire show.
I don't know what we're going to do about, not letting assistant coaches work with clubs because, they've
Money.
lost all their income
Money.
Yep.
from
That's
the
their income.
camps. All right, now you're going to take away their extra income from juniors. Doesn't seem like that's a good
Some of them are volunteers.
But
Some are volunteers.
think
Yeah, we
about
never had that question about that's going to be a Jamie question. That's right.
but
The hired volunteer.
But the question on coaches working with juniors are, do they bring COVID back to the college team? Because the juniors aren't being tested. There's a good
That's
reason.
good.
to have
There.
assistant coaches
That's a
work,
good reason. Yep.
because
Yeah.
that is the more critical point is you're just adding to the possibility of infection here, no matter how safe you think you're being.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
That's
I
a really
didn't
good
even
point.
think about that.
I didn't either.
Hey,
It
Mick.
was interesting what they were talking about is, not shutting the whole team down if only one player is tested positive. That's certainly not the case here.
It's not the case with
Yeah,
Bob.
different
Yeah.
institutions, yeah.
Yeah. Different states, different institutions. I heard one college team practiced once, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, one
Okay,
time.
guys,
Yep.
we are near our end. We
Yep.
want to thank Karen and Steve for joining us on today's Buzz Reaction. And we are excited to know that coaches still want to be life learners. For those viewers that want to be on our Buzz Reaction guest list, jump over to VB Master Coaches Instagram, go to the bio and click on the sign up to be a guest list link. Thanks for joining us today and see you next week on the Buzz.